Hello everyone, welcome to the show Beyond Borders, and today we are having Dr. Jay Bansal with us again, and this is the next part of our interview which we were doing on his book. So let's welcome Dr. Jay Bansal.
Thank you. Thank you. Namaste. My pranam to your audience.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for giving your time and coming again and talking about the some beautiful knowledge of the India Bharat with us. So, as moving forward, as we were talking about in our last episode, what was this part is about the education system of India. This is the like how the knowledge part or the education system was in India before the colonization. So before they introduced their education system, how we used to do the things and how India used to educate the people around them. So please let us know about something. How was the education system that time?
Thank you, Nutanji, and I like to thank Bharat FM and Bharat TV Media for inviting me again. The topic of our ancient education and knowledge system is, I think, very important for us. And I really appreciate having this opportunity to talk about it. If you wouldn't mind putting I prepared some slides, a brief presentation that I'll use during my talk. So if you could please load it on the screen, we'll use that to talk about the education system.
Definitely, I'm going to put it on the screen.
Okay, so yeah, very good. Thank you. Yeah, what you see on the screen here on one side is a copy of the book that we're talking about, Hinduism in America, How Hindu Dharma is Transforming the West. And as we said today, we're going to talk about the Hindu knowledge system before the colonizers took it over and uh, put it on the back burner, and quite frankly destroyed much of it. Now, before I get into what the knowledge system was, I think it's important for us to understand why it is important for us to talk about something that existed, say, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, or even 200 years ago. Because, most of us believe that, well, the knowledge has moved on. We have so many advances in science and philosophy and, all the different knowledge systems. So why is it important for us to know what our knowledge system was? And, my answer is two or three, four. First of all, and I think this is very important for the Hindu diaspora and entire Hindu ecosystem to think about. You see, we were colonized for 1,000 years. The Muslims came, they colonized us and really beat down our knowledge system, destroyed much of it, and then came the English, along with some of the other Europeans to colonize us, and really started telling us that we were worth nothing as a society, as a civilization, as a culture. We had no accomplishments whatsoever, and the only accomplishments that anything that existed that was considered good and worthy of knowing came from Europe, including Sanskrit. You see, including Sanskrit, they claim that we came. Some of our ancestors came from somewhere, in Europe, and they brought Sanskrit with them. So Sanskrit didn't really belong to us. So it is important for us to understand that that is all nonsense. Our history has been distorted by others, and we need to really know who we are, so that we can feel proud of ourselves and our accomplishments. People who are proud of their culture and civilization can accomplish a lot more than those who feel that others are better than them. So that's one reason. Second reason is, as most of you know, this month of October is Hindu Heritage Day month, Hindu Heritage Month, and it is important for us to know what our heritage was. So this is really my call it my service to Hindu community to talk about uh, our heritage, how great it was. And the third thing that I like to mention is, the our knowledge system, even though it's ancient, is not irrelevant. In modern times, in fact, a great deal of our knowledge is being used today. Think of mind sciences, the modern psychology and psychiatry, which we will hopefully talk about in future segments. A great deal of it is built upon the mind sciences that the Indian knowledge system specialized in. The system of yoga and meditation, and some of the other great accomplishments of our rishis of yore. So it is all for all those reasons that we should know who we are, where we come from, what we have, what we accomplished, and what that knowledge system is, and where it actually is today. So with that, let me move into the now one thing before I go to the next slide. As I said, a lot of our knowledge has been destroyed by others or put down, or is not available to us. So in order for us to talk about our knowledge system and our education system, we have to rely on um, the evidence that is available to us. And thankfully, there is a lot of evidence that we have available to us, going all the way back to when the Greek ambassador Megasthenes came to Bharat, more than 2,000 years ago, and then several Chinese travelers, Fayan, Hyun Song, Yeting, and many of the others, they have written a great deal about the prevalent society, as well as what our education system, etc., was. So we have tried to build our knowledge base from what these travelers have written. in addition to that in addition to that, there are actually real records from the British time, where the British officials in India were writing reports back to the British Parliament, British government in England, telling them what existed on the ground. So we have some really, great resources from which we have built this information. So with that, I will go to my first slide. Now, here is a quote, or actually excerpt from a British records that were taken from early 1800s. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a book called Third Report on the State of Education of Bengal by William Adam. This goes to around 1930, sorry, 1830s, 1830s, almost 200 years ago. This person from British India is writing back to the Parliament in England, and and this actually is, I've taken it from a book by Dharampalji, a very famous book. And so he reports on these, British records. And he says the mass education was more advanced and widespread in India compared to England. This is in 1830. In terms of what? In terms of number of schools, number of students, how long they stayed in school, quality of teachers, breadth of subjects, and financial support that was being given to the students. And the other thing he says is there were more so-called Shudras, or the Dalits, in schools than the other classes. Interesting, isn't it? A lot of people don't know, and would find it hard to believe, except if you go to these British reports. Now, this is one reference. There is another one. Thomas Monroe. He was the Governor General of Madras Presidency. He writes this: every village had a school. This is talking about 1800s. Every village had a school. So you see, this is the this is the level of education that we had in 1800s. And you can see why it had to be destroyed from a British point of view. If you are highly educated, you can think for yourself. It's very difficult to rule people like that. So they realized that, and they said, in order for us to rule these people who are highly educated, well thinking, great knowledge systems, we have to destroy their education system by introducing the English education. And that happened in 1835. Famous Thomas Macaulay, his talk in the British Parliament and all that, which I won't go into. But the point is that education system was very widespread. Now, as we all know, British left Bharat in 1947. So 1835 to 1947, they had 110, 112 years. And they destroyed the education system to a point where in 1947, only 12% of the people were educated. Imagine that. Okay. So moving on. Now, not only were the elementary or the school system widespread and basic education was widespread in Bharat, there were also these great universities, the great institutions of higher learning all over the country. So the oldest one that we know of is Takshila. This is in modern day Pakistan, of course, but this university is supposed to have been started in the 17th century BCE. Okay, so more than 3,000 years ago. It was destroyed by Huns, but great university. Nalanda is famous. The ruins are still available for people to see. Thankfully it's been rebuilt and restarted recently. But Nalanda University was built in 4th century BCE, and great deal has been written about this university. And I just like to read just a few things about someone has written.
Sure.
Hyun Song in he was in Bharat from 630 to 645, and he's written a great deal about how big the libraries were, how much how great the university was. Only 2 or 3 out of every 10 students who applied to Nalanda University were accepted. So here is one quote I like to give from a fellow named Paul Monroe. He's a historian, British historian, and his book is called an Encyclopedia of Education, Volume 1. So he says the great library of Nalanda was so huge that it was reported to have housed 9 million original manuscripts.
Wow.
Now,
That's huge.
can you believe it? In 1193, a fellow named Bakhtiar Khilji, the Turkish invader, he put fire to this library. He burned this library to the ground, and the volume of books was so huge that fire burned for more than 3 months and turned the nearby hills dark black. So just imagine the amount of knowledge that existed at that time. Then there are many other universities. Pushpagiri, Sharda is now in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, Vallabhi in Gujarat, many universities in Bihar, because Bihar was the old Magadha Empire, and there was a lot of, great institutions of higher learning there. Odisha had this library, and there are some 30 plus libraries that were dotted all around the country, universities that were dotted all around the country. So great education system, education of higher learning through these universities, and amazing, amazing universities. Okay. Now, moving on, what was the structure of our knowledge? So there are many parts to our knowledge system. There is the Shruti and Samriti. Shruti is the Vedas, and Smriti is the commentaries written by others, and an explanation of these great literature. And then we have the Puranas, which talk about the history of our various dynasties, and how different deities and devatas and so on and so forth, the history of their you know their journey. Then there is itihasa. Itihasa is you know real history, how it happened. That's what itihasa means. And we have two major epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, that make up Itihasa. There are many Purans. There are actually 18 Purans. There are, I won't name them here, but uh, those are there. Then there are something called Agmas. Agmas simply means what has come down. These are actual practices or, techniques for doing different things. How to build a mandir, that's a real science. It's how to put different things together, how what the structure should look like. Those are all part of agmas. There are hundreds of these. Then there is something called siddhanta. Siddhanta are the theories or well established principles. So, for example, there is Surya Siddhanta that actually refers to the the motion of the stars, the motion of the planets around the sun. So this is all about astronomy and what in modern days is called cosmology. And there are many of these siddhantas. You didn't something did not become a siddhanta until it was well proven over many centuries to be true. So as we talk about Big Bang theory, there would have been a siddhanta like that, or new in physics law of motion, there would be siddhantas like that. So our knowledge was structured in these various aspects, various parts.
Sir,
Okay.
I have a question here. So, when we are talking about the structure of the knowledge, and I can see on the screen Shruti and Smriti. So, as I understand, as a modern day system, Shruti means hearing what we are listening, and Smriti is what we are remembering. Is it something like that? Is it connected in that way or something
It,
else?
it is sort of connected in that way. So Shruti is supposed to have been received directly from the divine. So there is no known person who actually created this. It was there's these well, consider them the souls who have attained a certain level of you know higher consciousness. It was delivered to them, and they organized it and propagated it through the guru shishya parampara, through the oral tradition. So this is something that these great rishis, we call them rishis, but they were philosophers and scientists of their era. They they received it directly, and then they passed it on to the next generation thereafter, in some very sophisticated oral traditions. That itself could be a great talk, how they managed to preserve the sanctity of these great literature over so many centuries. Then Smriti is something that uh, it is, yeah, it sounds like it's something remembered, but it's more like our interpretation. So Shruti is, it's directly heard, but it's also complicated. In order for us to take that knowledge and make it reach out to common man, someone is writing the commentary on it. What it means, analysis, explanation, and their own interpretation sometimes. That is called Samriti. So it's really
Okay. Okay.
commentary analysis of the Shrutis, and
Okay.
sometimes adding their own interpretation. And then of course you have actual itihasas, how things happened over many centuries, the relationship between different characters in our in our dharmic history. So that's what those two things mean, to the best of my knowledge.
Oh,
Okay,
sure. I just like.
sure. Thank you. So now moving on, this is, I think it's important for us to understand that uh, Shrutis by themselves are not easily accessible in the sense that they are very complicated, uh, complicated structure, complicated language, complicated thought. In order for us to, understand them, there were many sporting systems that were required. So people had to become experts in these various systems before they could start looking at reading and interpreting the Shrutis, the Rig Vedas, and the Yajurveda and Samveda and Atharvaveda. So, for example, there is a branch called Shiksha, or the science of phonetics. Then you had to learn Vyakaran. I mean, the grammar. Without understanding grammar, it's very difficult to understand what is being said. And then etymology, how different words are put together. In order to analyze a particular word, you need to know how, what is the root of the word and how it's, put together, and many things like that. And then there are the other subsystems like the Ayurveda, the Gandharva Veda, and Dhanurvidya, and Earth Shastra and things like that. That and many other sporting systems. You needed to become a reasonably good expert at these subsystems before you could start interpreting Vedas. So when we look at Veda, Rig Veda or one of the other Vedas today or other Shrutis, and we say, oh, it says, it just is a prayer to some devata, it's prayer to Indra or prayer to Varuna or prayer to Agni and Savitri or Savitra or something like that. uh, the problem is, it is probably all that, but there is a lot more to it. And in order for us to actually become experts or become adhikaris, become rightful people to understand these things, we really need to first pass through a lot of these gates, get not, become experts in some of these subsystems before we interpret our Vedas. So there is, this is sort of the overall structure of our knowledge system that, that existed. And it's not something theoretical. I mean, these things are available today for people, who want to learn and know. Okay. Now, um, for some reason, the text is sort of meshing into each other, but that may be a problem with the screen. But what I thought I would do is, before I talk about what was in these great our knowledge systems, I thought I would show how some of the folks from who are not from the Indian tradition, how they looked at our knowledge system and how they felt about it. So here is Arthur Schopenhauer, very well known philosopher from of the 18th century. This fellow, he's a German philosopher. He says Vedas are the most rewarding and the most elevating book which can be possible in the world. Arthur Schopenhauer says that. James William, he's an American author from 1842 to 1910. He says, from the Vedas, we learn every aspect of life, culture, religion, science, ethics, law, cosmology, and meteorology. So, Vedas are not just, stutis or prayers to Lord Indra or Lord Agni or Surya or Varun or whatever have you. They contain the sum total of the knowledge that our forefathers had produced, including sciences, the law, the arthashastra, the economic, knowledge of economics, cosmology, how the whole universe is put together, and so on and so forth. It's far more than just simple prayers to or stutis to various devas. Far more than that. Now, I'll read six of them, and then I'll tell you in the book I have some more than 3 dozen such quotes from different people. Here is James Grant Duff. He's a British historian. That's 18th, 19th century British historian. And this is what he says: many of the advances in science that we consider today to have been made in Europe were in fact made in India centuries ago. This is a British fellow. He had no axe to grind. This is not some Indian or a Hindu, talking about their knowledge.
Yes,
Then
yes.
we
We are
have a
not manipulating. This is written by them, not by us.
this is written by them, not by us. I wanted to make that point clear, that this is what the outsiders were saying, 100 years ago, 200 years ago.
Yes.
By the way, as they were trying to destroy it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Uh, Here is Sir Hunter. He's a British surgeon, 1840 to 1900. He says the surgery of the ancient Indian physicians was bold and skillful. A special branch of surgery was dedicated to rhinoplasty. This is correcting of the nose. This is plastic surgery that we talk about,
Yes.
which European surgeons have now borrowed. Okay, um, it would come as a surprise to a lot of our own people. Believe it or
That's
not.
very good to know. I'm hearing this first time.
Here are three physicists. Erwin Schrödinger, he's an Austrian physicist, and he got Nobel Prize in 1933. He says most of my ideas and theories are heavily influenced by Vedanta.
Okay.
Niels Bohr, everyone knows about Niels Bohr. He's a great, well-known physicist. He got Nobel Prize in 1922. He is a quantum physicist, and he says, I go to the Upanishads to ask questions. Then Robert Oppenheimer, everyone has heard of him. He is father of the atomic bomb, and there was a recent
He is
Hollywood.
suddenly very famous right now because of that movie and all things.
Correct, correct. So this is what he said. He says access to the Vedas is the greatest privilege this century may claim over all previous centuries. And as I said earlier, these are just six quotes that I have taken from the book. I have close to 3 dozen quotes from different scientists, philosophers, political leaders, historians, and they all make up this ecosystem that says Indian knowledge system was something that was fabulous, and one of the greatest of its time, and has given a great deal to the world. The Europeans, science of various types have borrowed heavily from some of these ideas. Okay. Now, so let me see what else. What is next? Give me a second. um, okay, so this is interesting. We don't. Uh, what we don't know is how massive the Indian knowledge system was and is. I mentioned earlier that Bakhtiyar Khilji in 1193 destroyed 9 million books in Nalanda library alone. But you can go today, go to Google or one of your search engines and ask how many Sanskrit manuscripts are there in the world? How many Sanskrit manuscripts are there in the world? And the top answer you will get is 30 million. 30 million Sanskrit manuscripts exist today in the world. Now, you ask the same question, except at this time, you ask how many Greek and Latin manuscripts are there in the world. These are the ancient languages, language of European literature, and you find close to 25,000. So that is a ratio of 1,000 to 1. So Indian Sanskrit literature manuscripts are 1,000 times more than what is available in Europe at this time. This actually you can do the experiment yourself. Just go to Google or something and ask for it.
Yes, yes. Find it yourself.
Exactly. Now, I didn't believe it. I still didn't believe it. So until I stumbled upon this fact, there is a project called Namami, National Manuscripts Mission, that Government of India is running as we speak. And I went to their website to find out what they're doing. Now, what they said here is, and it's very difficult for your viewers to actually read, but I'll read it for you. It talks about 42.03 lakhs manuscripts have been documented. So that's 4.2 million manuscripts they have actually taken and documented, digitized them, not interpreted, but actually digitized them. And they have in their possession over 10 million manuscripts. So, so here is a clear evidence that 30 million manuscripts, existence of 30 million manuscripts in the world is not a fairy tale. It's something that is quite real.
And
Okay,
this
so
is
that
a
is the
really incredible effort by government of India for preserving such incredible things and presenting them in the current modern form, like digitalizing them and presenting for everyone.
correct. I think it's very much needed actually because some of the media on which these manuscripts exist, is sort of decaying. So it's good that they're being preserved in a digital form. But you see, one problem I want to point out is that digitizing is one thing, interpreting them is another.
Oh yes,
We really need to interpret them, understand what they contain, what they are saying, what great knowledge they contain. Unfortunately, there are not very many good Sanskrit scholars available who can do the interpretation for us. And frankly, I would not want to rely on non-Hindu, Sanskrit scholars because they have a vested interest in distorting our narrative. They have been doing it for hundreds of years, and I would not trust them for 1 minute to do the interpretation. So I would really hope that we can, create enough Sanskrit scholars to interpret these great texts for us. Okay, moving on. One thing that you always question is, so what's in them? Yes, different scientists, European scientists said they can contain this, that, and the next thing, but let's find out for ourselves. So here is a statement that I'd like to read for your viewers. It says the area of the diagonal of a rectangle produced by itself equals both the areas separately by its sides. Okay. Now, anyone who's done high school math would know that this is Pythagoras theorem.
yes.
Okay, except that it is actually English translation of something called Bodhayan Sutra,
Oh wow.
and it was written 400 years before Pythagoras was even born. So how did Pythagoras come by it?
Right.
Here is a letter that President John Adams wrote to Thomas Jefferson, and he says here Pythagoras passed 20 years in his travels in India. These sublime doctrines Pythagoras learned in India. Okay, so this is just one example I wanted to give. There are many examples like that. There was a lot of this interchange going on back, in the old days, where the Greek travelers, the Chinese travelers were coming to India to gain knowledge, and then they went back, and over time, appropriated either they appropriated the knowledge or subsequent generations decided that it was not a good idea to give credit to Bharat.
Yeah.
So things, then they started distorting the narrative. Okay, now here is a man. This is a fifth century person, Aryabhatta. He gave zero to the world.
Yes.
Without zero, you cannot count, you cannot do math, you cannot do anything. Zero is one of the greatest contributions to mankind, and this is the man who did it.
Yes.
Uh, but not just zero. He did much more than that. He was actually an astronomer, mathematician, and astronomer. So he is talking about the starry vault is fixed. It is the earth which, moving on its own axis, seems to cause the rising and setting of the planets and stars. So he's talking about motion of earth around the sun. This is around in the 5th century. And remember this, people, people of well, few generations ago, they used to believe that the earth was stationary and sun moved around it.
Yes.
Galileo in the 17th century was the first one in Europe to say, no, it's the other way around. Earth moved around the sun. Before that, there was no knowledge of it. And for saying that, he spent the rest of his life in house arrest.
Yes.
Okay. And here is this man, Aryabhatta, in 5th century, talking about this great principle of astronomy, where he's talking about Earth moving around the sun, and why then, you know, uh, sun doesn't go down, sun doesn't go up. It's the rising. I mean, the day and night, the formation of day and night is because the Earth is moving around its axis, and it's going around the sun. Okay, all right. So
Yes.
moving on. Uh, I didn't want to spend too much time on this thing, but I just want to list some of the seminal contributions our mathematicians, scientists, philosophers have made over the centuries. Uh, People have heard of Sushruta. He is the father of surgery and rhinoplasty. Chirk, he is the father of pharmacology. So in fact, even today you can buy Chirk Samhita
Yes.
on, you can buy it on Amazon. It's many volumes. It
Yes.
is as good as modern, encyclopedia of pharmacology. Okay, so um, listing various herbs, listing various compounds that and how what their effect is on the body, on the human system. That is what he wrote in the 4th century before our common era. There are many others. I won't mention every one of them. Um, so Brahmagupta in the 6th century is talking about negative numbers. In the 19 even the 19th century in Europe, people thought negative numbers were the work of devil. They would
Okay.
not. Yeah, it's there. Some famous scientists talk about negative numbers are nonsense. They don't exist. There is no such thing. In the 19th century.
Yes.
Um, we have here, let's see, who do I, yeah, so Aryabhatta in the 10th century is producing sine tables. So trigonometry is designed. Why sine tables? Why trigonometry? Why all this interest in planetary motion? Because there was tremendous amount of overseas trade that was taking place, and you had to do navigation. Navigation required knowledge of all these things, you see.
Yes.
So it wasn't, I mean, some of it was probably pure curiosity, but a lot of it was to help business, to help trade, to help travel, and so on and so forth.
That's a
Here in
lot.
the 12th century, Bhaskar too is designing differential calculus, which is now attributed to Newton, in the 17th century. So a lot of these ideas have, I'm not suggesting that, every one of these ideas was stolen and appropriated. They may have also come up, Newton may have also come up with this idea on his own. I don't know. But reality exists, and you can't deny it. that this knowledge existed in the 12th century. Okay, and there are many things like that. I mean, it'll take long time for me to talk about each and every one of these things, but these are fundamental building blocks of modern mathematics, modern physics, modern science that were being developed and given out to the world by our great civilization.
I truly agree with all this.
Now, other contributions that we can talk about. You look at this is a step well.
Yes.
Step well is a well that actually is, it's where you can actually walk down to the water. You have to, you can climb down to the water, and a very, very intricate structure. Now, you cannot design this. You cannot even conceive of doing something like that without a, deep understanding and mastery of, mathematics, mastery of engineering, mastery of architecture, etc. Many different sciences come together to design a structure like that. You have this rock cut temple, Kailash temple in Ellora Caves. It's a famous temple. It's a temple that has been carved from top down. You take, you just one big rock, and you're just, taking stone out, carving stone out, and removing the stone. It's just created from a monolithic, a single piece of stone. Uh, Nothing like that ever exists. You cannot create something like this without, you know, mastery on, uh, on variety of subjects. How do you even carve a large rock like that? What kind of instruments would have been used, and where did that all that debris go? Is still something that we are talking about. We don't know yet. These are many temples, right from Rameshwaram to Kedarnath. Okay, there are five, how many? Seven temples. They lie in a perfect straight line from north to south.
Yes.
How did they create that without understanding of astronomy, without being able to measure to a very high degree of accuracy? You know,
Yes.
how, how is it possible? You have this iron pillar that goes back many centuries. There is one in Delhi in Qutub Minar complex today. Doesn't rust. It doesn't rust. Hasn't rusted in all these centuries. So there was something about our metallurgical science that knew how to create these compounds, these alloys that would resist rusting. Wood steel, people call it Damascus steel. It was a game changer in warfare, because previous to this, the swords and instrument, the fighting instruments used to be made with soft metal. This this would cut every metal, and so this knowledge actually comes from south of India today. Woods, I believe, is actually steel in Tamil, or iron in Tamil. And this is a knowledge that was went from Bharat to the West, with travelers and through invaders. Charak Sangita, I mentioned earlier, a book of knowledge of medicine and herbs and so on and so forth. So there is, you see, tremendous amount of knowledge that our people had created over centuries, and that knowledge has been spread through the world. Some of it has been stolen, some of it has been given different names, so that you do not have to attribute it to Bharatiya scientists and philosophers, but a lot of it still exists today. It's just incumbent on us as the inheritors of this wonderful knowledge to first of all respect it, know about it, respect it, and then talk about it, and talk about our narrative, feel proud of who we are, where we came from. And I believe that is the last slide. So this in 45 minutes or so, Nutanji, is um, what I can tell your viewers about the knowledge system and the education system that we are the inheritors of. So when you when you think about where we come from, please remember that we come from a great civilization that has done tremendous achievements and has given so much to the world. Dhanyavad.
Yes, definitely. And I'm overloaded with the information. There is a lot which we need to go in. Every slide has individual information which can be spreaded in many sub branches. So I can see in the last slide, even I can see there's a architecture, the line of, and I believe these all are the shivlings which are in the one line from the south to north, or we could say from up to down.
Correct, correct. Yeah, so the seven different temples, well-known temples,
Yeah.
uh, that lie in a straight line. Is um, uh, yeah, along a straight line. I don't know how you draw a straight line like that over 2,000 miles without having a deep knowledge of some way to measure it, right? You have to have a knowledge of astronomy, and a very accurate way to measure your position on on the earth.
No, definitely I can understand, and this is an eye-opening conversation. It's like, especially the initial parts where you were narrating the codes of the people which are not from India, actually, or we could say it more precisely that they are the people who were trying to just manipulate the history or something like that. I would not go in that part more, because we are trying to say that what we have and why we should be proud of where we are from.
Correct, correct,
Well,
correct.
thank you so much for all this knowledge. I'm looking forward for more. And thank you so much for coming and giving us the such glimpse through the slides and going back to the ancient India.
Thank you. It's not so ancient. That's one thing I want to remind everyone. Some of it, obviously, we are the oldest civilization on the face of the earth. So of course, a lot of our knowledge is built many, many, many centuries ago. But it is important to remember that just because knowledge is old doesn't mean it's not relevant.
Oh,
It's it's uh, it's being a lot of this knowledge is being used right today in our own lives, and I think that that is a topic that is worth exploring in some depth down the road.
definitely, definitely, we will do it. And thank you so much for today's session.
Thank you so much, and my pranam to all your viewers. Namaste.
Thank you so much. Namaste.